Well, recently, reports around Xbox and 343 with Halo have not been great. The most recent ones talked about layoffs, with nearly a third of 343 just being laid off completely, as Microsoft made about 10,000 different layoffs public, and their plans to do so over the next fiscal quarter, to my understanding. So there could still be more layoffs being announced, but 343 was hit pretty hard, and it's pretty clear there's been a lot of internal turmoil going on with management moving around, leaving, and all of this. But in a recent report, it does appear that, yes, once again, there's more bad news around the Halo studio, but I'm also kind of optimistic now going forward, and we're going to talk about that here today. So if you guys enjoy the video, make sure you like it and subscribe if you're new here to the Small Way Plus channel. Let's head over here to the report, this from Bloomberg, that says, yeah, Microsoft Studio behind Halo franchise is all but starting from scratch. This broke earlier today from Jason Schreier, and it is a very interesting read because it does confirm a couple of things that have been rumored for what feels like a month or two now, specifically with that game engine. Now, in the article here, he does talk about the layoffs and that nearly 100 people were laid off from 343. And we know the leadership changes with now Pierre Heinz being the lead here and steering the ship, as Joseph Staten went back to Xbox Publishing. The thing with Pierre, though, is he was able to right the ship with the Halo Master Chief Collection and at least get it to where it just functioned correctly, which that was a really bad launch for a game, especially one with Master Chief on the cover, it being about really the legacy of Halo, and that thing was just busted from the start. So I'm hopeful that with Pierre now kind of steering the ship and the direction of Halo Infinite can work to kind of recover the series a bit. And now the question came down to that Slipspace engine. It was developed specifically for Halo Infinite, and I think overall it nailed the feel of Halo. Most people who have played Halo for a long time went through Halo 4, then Halo 5, and it really didn't feel like Halo anymore. But Halo Infinite, as they had mentioned, went back to basics, and it's probably the best feeling Halo game that 343 has ever created, which is good because that was something they've struggled with ever since taking over from Bungie. But now, obviously, they have not been able to fit Halo into the live service game kind of genre. And the reasoning for that keeps coming back to the Slipspace engine just not playing nice necessarily with their entire setup at Microsoft, which, as we know and has been talked about quite frequently, has to do with contract work and contractors moving in and out of Microsoft and these different studios constantly. I mean, we hear it's like an 18-month contract, and then they essentially have to leave and you bring new people in, and you're working with a proprietary engine with Slipspace to where it might take you months to get up to speed on everything, and then you start creating, which by the time you're really familiar with the engine and have complete different projects, then you're kind of on your way out the door with your contract expiring. So while it might work in other parts of Microsoft, it's not really something that's suited to game development, especially with a proprietary engine. And that's the part about this report from Jason Schreier that has me more optimistic, and that is that apparently internally at 343, they have decided to shift focus to Unreal Engine. I don't know what that means for Slipspace because it's basically designed for Halo. It's the Halo engine. So does it get shelved? Is it still used and maintained to maybe create a new single-player experience for Halo down the road, like an ODST or something? I guess it's possible, but it appears now with them shedding a good bit of their workforce that they are looking to more or less focus in heavily on the multiplayer aspect. The campaign or extra content for campaign doesn't appear to be a focus from 343. However, Microsoft has continued to assure 343 that they are like the Halo developers primarily, but they will be going to other studios outside of 343 to work on different Halo projects. With the latest one is another point of optimism for me is Tatanka, which we got a little more information about it with this report. And it started as a Battle Royale mode for Halo Infinite, and I think that's still what it is at its core. But according to Jason Schreier, it's kind of evolved a bit and shifted around and become something a bit more than your traditional Battle Royale. And that was my main concern, is that they show up with a very standardized version. One that you can match up 1-to-1 with a Call of Duty Warzone or something, but maybe not be quite as good. No, in this instance, it seems like maybe they had some more creative ideas to add in, and we'll be able to come up with a very unique spin on the Battle Royale genre, but in the Halo universe. And it was also referred to here but in the report, by the way, as a game. And what I'm thinking is going to happen is we have the Halo campaign that shows up kind of as its own like icon. You have the Halo multiplayer that's free to play as its own icon. And then you have this Tatanka mode that will be treated as almost a third arm for Halo Infinite, kind of working into that platform of the entire series. Now, I am curious if this will be free to play. You figure it would, considering that's something that really helps out with the Battle Royale genre, in the sense that Warzone is free because they have 150 people per match for these larger modes. So you want to make sure you have as many people as possible playing at all times. Now, according to Jez Corden, within 343, there's been this internal tug of war, as he said, between keeping with Slipspace or going to Unreal Engine. And with Slipspace, again, the biggest part about that is, the drawback would be it's proprietary, and it obviously has not worked out well to get content out consistently. That's obvious across the board. But even things like the playlists, which I hadn't even considered this, was an issue for the engine, where they show up and it didn't have like Team Slayer for Halo when Infinite came out, and it was very confusing to all of us. But then they elaborated a bit and said, well, you know, it kind of broke the game a bit when we just dropped Team Slayer in because of the engines, the Slipspace engine, which, again, it was very weird to hear that. So the fact that the engine does seem to have some issues with updates around live service, and it's not well known across the industry, well, it might make it easier for the contractor situation to go to Unreal Engine that's well known across the industry. The problem, apparently the drawback here, and one of the pushbacks within 343, is they may lose the feel of Halo that they've developed with Slipspace for Halo Infinite. And I understand that is a concern, especially since they took so long to develop an engine to nail the feel of Halo, which they were able to do. Unfortunately, that engine just does not seem to lend itself well to the live service aspect. So, this is a reason I wouldn't be shocked necessarily if Slipspace is still developed and it continues to evolve in the background and is eventually used for just a piece of content for Halo in general as its own standalone game, maybe into the future, that's not as reliant on the live service aspect. But Unreal Engine, I mean, it's very well known across the industry, right? It's like the engine that you consistently hear that studios go to save themselves time when it comes to development, because Epic is building out the engine. The studio doesn't have to use some internal engine they continue to update going forward as they're creating the game itself. And considering the Unreal Engine is used heavily, and is primarily used in like Fortnite, which is a live service game, you figure there are a lot of tools and setups within that engine that would work really well for Halo Infinite to get content out in a timely fashion. That's been their biggest issue now. So, massive shift, though, within Halo to do this, to go from Slipspace to Unreal. But I think in the long run, and what I mean by that is probably like 3 or 4 years from now, we could potentially be looking back on Halo Infinite as a game that went through a lot of troubled development and really support, from what we've seen with the most recent season, but that they eventually figured it out and got to a point where it was much more enjoyable and fun to sign into, you know, every week with a bunch of friends, as there's consistent content dropping. But the 10-year plan appears to be out as well. So it was something that was kind of talked about. I think Chris Lee mentioned it in an interview, and well, he's not working on the Halo Infinite anymore, so it seems like at this point it's full speed ahead on the multiplayer aspect with an engine that hopefully will allow them to hit a bit of a better gear or higher speed in general to get them to that finish line of a built-out game that maybe has a battle royale attached to it from certain affinity. But let me know what you guys think about this situation down below. It is impressive to me that Microsoft has handled Halo in this fashion for so long, but I'm hoping that this is actually the turning point. And while, I mean, it's not a great headline to read that Microsoft is, Studio 343 is starting Halo all but from scratch, I'm hoping this leads to a better future for Master Chief. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.